All right, what's up, Facebook Live family? Welcome to City Church Online. So glad you guys are here and tuning in. Today we are kicking off a brand new series, and I am super pumped to introduce you into that. But I got some really big news before we get into this new series, and I'm so excited to share it with you. Last week, our friends here at New Day gathered together and had a vote that they will be closing down New Day, the church that meets here in the morning. They're going to be closing down at the end of this month. And so their last Sunday together is going to be the last Sunday of this month. And while that is a heavy to different degrees, it's also a really big celebration in the sense of all that God is doing in and through them. And I want to take a moment and just celebrate, man. They've been an amazing catalyst of the love of Jesus working in and through them here in Boulder over the last 15 plus years. And to be honest, none of us would have known a year ago that God would orchestrate a relationship between City Church and New Day that would put us in a position we are today. And so not only have they been a huge blessing to City Church over the last year, letting us meet in this building for free, but now we have the opportunity to come alongside them as they pass the baton to us into this new season. And so first, I just want to celebrate and say thank you to New Day and their faithfulness and sacrifice of loving and serving Boulder so well. Can we give them a hand? If you're on the other side of a phone or a TV, give them a hand. It's okay. We're going to do that and be awkward tonight. Secondly, I want to tell you what that means for us. This is some pretty big news. At first, we were a little worried. We're like, uh-oh, City Church is about to be homeless, and luckily, New Day is being incredibly gracious and kingdom-minded, and they are handing over this building to City Church at the end of the month. Holy cow. And we are so humbled by the radical generosity and the incredible grace of God involved in all of this. And so what that means for you and I is that beginning April 1st, City Church will assume the lease of this building and all the responsibilities associated with it, and we're grateful to be a part of that. It means for our setup team that has been setting up and tearing down before and after service, faithfully crushing it for the last year. No more setup. Oh my goodness, it's so good. And I know that's exciting, but that's not the most exciting thing. It means that we have the opportunity now to use our time and energy that was being put there in different ways, which you're excited about. It means also that we have the opportunity for the first time ever to do our Easter celebration this year at 10:30 in the morning in this building. And so we're excited for how we're going to serve the community on that day as we celebrate. And also, here's what it means for you if you're part of the City Church family or if you're a partner with us in a different way. We want to invite you to start praying with us as our team is praying and seeking God on the opportunity we have now to move our service times from 4 p.m. to 10:30 long term. And so we're praying over that. We haven't made a decision yet. For sure, we're meeting Easter Sunday at 10:30, but we now have the opportunity, which we have not had before, to meet in the mornings. And so we want to invite you to pray with us over that. And lastly, I just want to let you know what this means for us. It means that we're going to continue to be a church in the city and for the city. And it gives us just a little bit more of a presence here in our city, which is awesome, a little bit more of a permanent hold, if you will. And I just want to remind you and help you into like the picture of this, that this building is a tool to be used, not an idol to be pursued. Meaning we're not going to spend all of our energy, time, and resources painting walls and focusing on this building and being internally focused. We are still a church in the city and for the city, and we plan to leverage this building and this opportunity for the mission of God in Boulder, for His glory and the good of our city. And so whatever that might look like as God leads, we plan to do. But we want to let you know that it's not going to become an unnecessary distraction for us so we can stay on a mission in our city. So way to go, God, in opening up a huge door for us to be a part of this. We're so excited for what this means, and we're inviting you into this season as things begin to unfold. Okay, so that's the big news. Whew. I'm still like processing it. It is amazing to me. But here's the intro for this series that we're kicking off called I'm In. And what I love about this series is that pretty much everyone that's a part of this community already carries this disposition. Can you just say with me, I'm in? Everybody say, I'm in. I'm in. And you know what's really cool is I don't have to point a gun to anybody or like threaten anybody. The culture that we've been building here, the community and the family that we have, the natural disposition of everyone's heart is just, man, I'm in and I'm for it and we're here and whatever it is, like we're just ready and willing to be a part of it. I'm so grateful. I just want to say thank you. If you're a part of City Church, thank you so much for carrying that disposition. You are a huge, huge blessing, and I'm grateful for that we're not a church that has to beg and prod and plead people to do anything, but rather we have the attitude that we get to be a part of this thing. And so thank you for that. But for others of you, if you are looking at City Church, you're on the outside looking in, you've been thinking about joining, or you're just kind of testing the waters, man, I just want you to know that this is a great place to be in. It's really, really awesome to be a part of this community, a part of this family. And so no matter where you are, no matter where you come from, no matter where you're going, this is a great place to call home. And I want you to know you're loved, safe, and welcome here. But here's the deal. Listen, we love you so much that if you're checking out City Church and it's just not the right fit for you, that we're committed to finding you a home that is. And so we're happy to help you find a place where you do plug in and get connected in a healthy way. And so this series is a play on words. I'm super pumped to invite you into it. 4 weeks that are going to work with this I'm in idea, and they're really going to focus on 4 identity points. And so I'm going to give them to you. They're represented in 4 icons up here. I'm going to walk through these with you, these 4 identity points over the next 4 weeks that we're dealing with. The first one is I'm invited. Everyone say, I'm invited. If you're on the other side of a phone or a TV, I'm invited. Okay, I'm invited into God's family. That's the envelope. The second thing is I'm invested. Everyone say, I'm invested. I'm invested into God's mission. The third thing is I'm invaluable. Say, I'm invaluable. Oh, we got to get excited on the other side of the phone. Everyone is gifted and a gift. And the last one is I'm influential. Everyone say, I'm influential. I'm influential. That everyone has influence, whether you acknowledge or recognize it or not. But man, we are so excited to tap into this and bring out the best in who God has made you to be. Now, what's really cool about the series that we're doing and the next 4 weeks is that this is both the beginning of a new series and the ending of our old series, He Would Love First. And so I'm super pumped. We've been showing you this icon called the 5% Life. And this is taking 5% of your time in a given week and investing it intentionally into 4 different areas that grow every significant relationship in your life. And so the last 4 weeks we've been walking through that. Seth did a great job last week of helping us understand the value of community by getting close. And so today I'm transitioning into the get out aspect, and that's defined this way. Get out is time spent weekly living on mission where I live, work, and play. And what's amazing about this series that we're tapping into for the next 4 weeks is these 4 messages are strategically placed to really focus on this percentage, that 2% of your week, 3 hours of your week, if you will, that you're engaging where you live, work, and play on mission alongside Jesus as He works in and through you. And so the next 4 weeks are about reorienting and focusing our hearts and minds on what God is doing in this season in and through City Church. And all of this is leading up to our Easter celebration that's only 4 weeks away, by the way. Holy cow, Easter is almost here, and we'll see what the coronavirus does to our Easter gathering. But right now, we're hopeful that we're going to get to serve our community and celebrate in a big way. But I want you to know how amazing Easter is going to be, and this is all pivotal for the conversation we're having. This is the mailer going out. I want you to see this. This mailer is hitting homes all over Boulder in about 2 weeks. 65,000 homes, I think I got that backwards, I'm dyslexic, 56,000 homes are getting a mailer that looks just like this, and it says, Help Us Love Big. And I want you to know that this is coming because this is really important. We got our team together, and we asked the question, how do we do more than just create an invite to an Easter service? I mean, there's plenty of those, and that's nothing wrong with that, but how do we meet people where they are? That's part of our mission, is to help people find their way to God from where they are. So how do we meet people where they are? And we begin to brainstorm and talk about, hey, well, you know what? Easter is a time that we celebrate the incredible love and sacrifice and radical generosity of the God that we get to know and follow. And so what if we not only celebrated ourselves, but then extended some radical generosity in that season? And so we decided to make this mailer focused on how we're going to serve our city. And so all of them say, Help Us Love Big. And what's amazing is on the back of them, when people get them, it's a really cool invitation. It says, hey, we've always had a heart to be a church in the city and for the city. And so that's always been our heartbeat. But in this season, we want to give back in a bigger way, and we want you to help us. And so there's 2 options on the back of this mailer. This is so cool. The first one is bring this mailer with you to our Easter gathering on Easter Sunday, April 12th, and put it in the drop box that we're going to have, and we're going to give away $50 in your honor to Crestview Elementary right down the street that we serve often and frequently. And option 2 is super cool. It says, hey, if church is not your thing, or you already have plans that day and you're doing brunch with grandma, then between now, the moment that you get that flyer, and Easter Sunday, there's going to be a drop box located outside of our building on our property. You bring that drop it in the box, and we're going to give away $25 in your honor to Crestview Elementary, up to $5,000. Now, guys, listen, our team ran the numbers, and we were like, hey, what's our capacity and ability to do? And 5,000 was like, woo, that's going to take some radical generosity, but we can do it. And based on how Christmas Eve went and the number of guests we had there, we're like, okay, we could hit pretty close to $5,000 in donations for Crestview. Now, listen, I called the staff and the team at Crestview. I called their volunteers, and they are beside themselves, excited and blown away by the radical generosity of City Church. This is going to meet a huge need in the middle of a lot of updates happening in this school, and they serve a huge portion of North Boulder here, and so it's an opportunity we get to be a part of. And so, first of all, I want to say thank you, City Church, for your radical generosity and allowing us to do that. But also, I want you to see that we're being very intentional about meeting people where they are, saying, hey, listen, we're a church in the city and for the city, whether or not you come to our Easter service or not. Right? Like, there's no tricks or gimmicks. Like, generous is just who we are. It's not a gimmick to get you here. And so even if you don't want to come to my Easter service on Sunday morning, you drop that flyer off, and we're still going to honor you and be a blessing to the Crestview Elementary. And so I want you to see what you're a part of coming up. We're going to put invites in your hands and all of those things. But all of the next 4 weeks is gearing up for what we're doing on Easter Sunday. You guys with me? All right, online, you guys good? Now we're going to kick off the series. I got to take a breath. It's weird preaching to an empty room. I feel like I'm talking 1,000 miles an hour. Ready, go. I'm invited. Everyone say, I'm invited. Yeah, you are. Here we go. All right, anybody ever focus or feel like you got FOMO, that fear of missing out? Yeah, you know, you get on Instagram and you see all your friends doing stuff and they're posting those awesome pictures and it looks great, and all of a sudden you run across one and you're like, half of your friends are in there and you're like, why didn't I get invited to that? You ever felt that way? And especially right now, we got like social distancing happening and quarantines happening, and so there's some serious FOMO happening right now. Earlier today, Michelle, one of our staff members, texted my wife Danielle, and they were just seeing how each other is, and they've both been under the weather. I don't know that they have the coronavirus, but we're watching them closely, and they haven't been feeling well, so they've been really laying low. And Michelle is going crazy. She's been down for like a week and a half, and she's just FOMO to death over there. And so there was a text message about, Danielle said, hey, I think hopefully by Tuesday I'm going to be better and we'll see what happens. And Michelle thought, like, Danielle was saying there was some kind of party happening on Tuesday. She's going to be better. And so she was like, oh, what's happening on Tuesday? Like, I got to be there. And Danielle's like, no, I just think I'm going to be better on Tuesday. And so it's the real deal right now, that FOMO. I don't know if you've ever felt like you've been left out or uninvited, but odds are you've had multiple moments of that. And I can remember one in particular that really helps us transition into our conversation today. So when I was a brand new Christian, I gave my life to Jesus right at 15, almost 16 years old, and was loving what Jesus was doing in and through me. It was amazing. His love was amazing, and I was super excited just to be learning as a brand new Christian. And I was going with my friends to church one day. Woke up late, as is the norm for someone who's 16 years old, and stayed up late on a Saturday. And so I was running out the door, didn't have time to really get ready, so brushed my teeth and put a hat on, ran out the door with my friends. Got to the church that we were going to go to with my friends, was walking in the door, and I was met by a door greeter, and he looked at me, and he was not very greeter-y, he was not very nice, and he said, son, we take our hats off in respect of the house of God. I don't know if he actually sounded like that, but that's how I heard him. Like Foghorn Leghorn from like Looney Tunes. Anyway, he said, we take our hats off in respect of honor of the house of God. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that my hair is going to be more dishonoring to God than me taking my hat off. And he wouldn't let me in. He genuinely wouldn't let me go into the service without taking my hat off. And I was with my friends and my girlfriend, and so it wasn't worth a fight in that moment. And so I took my hat off and I walked in, embarrassed and ashamed, genuinely. You know, appearance was a big deal at the time, and so having hat hair was not my favorite thing to have. Walked in, sat down, put my hat back on, and out of spite, I have no idea what the message was about. I was angry the whole time, and I never went back. Never went back. And I was really conflicted as a new follower of Jesus who loved me, who met me where I was, who saved me and forgave me, and didn't give me a list of rules to follow or a dress code to follow. And then here I am with another Jesus follower who genuinely made me feel like I was unwanted and unwelcome in this place. And luckily, there were some people in my life at the moment, Scott and Linda Dahlstrom, who were a part of a smaller circle that we were going with to that church. And They loved me and they continued to serve me, and they were consistent in their love for me and my circle of friends. And so they invited us to their home for a season while we were kind of getting over what just happened. And this is the first church I'd ever been to. I didn't know what churches were like, so my assumption was all churches are like this. They're all judgmental. They're all going to have some kind of rules that I'm not going to fit into. And they loved me back into a new church not long after that. And so I'm grateful for them. But you probably know someone, or maybe you yourself have experienced a story like that didn't have a happy ending, where someone had a negative experience but never had an opportunity for that to be redeemed. And so I don't know where you walked in when it comes to this feeling of being unwanted or uninvited or unloved, but here's what I want you to know is that here at City Church, we're not perfect at this by any means, but we see you, we love you, and more importantly, so does Jesus. And we want you to know that this is a place where you can be loved, safe, and welcome. And what I love about Jesus and what we're going to look at today that I've learned from Jesus consistently is that Jesus over and over again invites the people others reject. Over and over again, Jesus invites and loves and welcomes the people others reject. So we're going to dig into that. We're going to be in the book of Luke, and when you read the historical accounts of Jesus' life, there's a lot of tension on the front end of people wrestling with who is Jesus, and people are trying to figure it out, right? Like they really don't know. He's doing miracles. He's this amazing teacher, and he's claiming to represent God, and he's drawing these huge crowds, and so people are trying to figure out who he is and what they think about him. And one of the assumptions at the time is that if you were an influential religious leader, that you had a circle of friends that you ran with, and there were these hyper religious people called the Pharisees, and they were super devout, like the best of the best when it came to being religious and following the law, and so they kind of had their own little crew. And one day Jesus gets invited to have dinner with some Pharisees. And the assumption would be like, okay, if Jesus represents God and he's speaking for God, then if Jesus is going to like anybody, if Jesus is going to have any kind of circle of friends, it's going to be the Pharisees. The assumption in that culture at the time was they're super religious, and so God loves them more than everybody else. Like they're just doing better than all of us at the rules and regulations side of things, and so God loves them more. And so Jesus gets invited to a Pharisee party. I don't know if you've ever been to one of those. I can't recall if I have or not, but maybe somewhere in there you've been a part of a Pharisee party. But Jesus gets invited, and at the time, there's no like cultural entertainment like we have. And so, they don't have Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus, and they can't just go binge watch, The Bachelor or catch up on Grey's Anatomy or watch Jerusalem Housewives or anything like that, right? They don't have that opportunity. And so community entertainment came in a couple different ways. One of them was a bunch of religious leaders would get together in a home. Crowds would gather around that home and listen in as the religious leaders got together and kind of flexed their God knowledge, right? They would get together and talk about all of their head knowledge of what they know about God and use big words and fancy rhetoric and just kind of flex about their Pharisee knowledge, if you will. And so Jesus was invited to a flexing circle, okay? It's like Muscle Beach in Jerusalem. And so in Luke chapter 7, it's going to be on the screen. You can turn with me there as well. Luke 7 is where we're going to start. One of the Pharisees asked Jesus to have dinner with him. So Jesus went to his home and sat down to eat. When a certain immoral woman from that city heard he was eating there, she brought a beautiful alabaster jar filled with expensive perfume. Now pause right there for just a moment. Jesus gets invited to the party, and a certain immoral woman shows up. Now, just for the record, that's a really nice way of saying the town prostitute. Like, everybody knows who this lady is. She's got a terrible reputation. She's the lowest of low. Like, obviously, it's not like the greatest profession even today, but in that time, it was heavy outcast. We're talking like we would treat lepers and others with infectious diseases. I mean, she is just unwanted, unloved in every circle, probably talked about in negative ways over and over again, right? Every mom tells their kids, stay away from that lady. She you might catch what she has. And so this is a really nice way of saying that a prostitute comes into their gathering. And let me the text doesn't give us all the details, but I just want to walk you through maybe an empathetic process with this story so that you and I can relate. One of the questions that you've got to ask is, how did she get here? So she walks in, and I want you to know this is unacceptable and unheard of. They are disgusted that she would even have the nerve to show up at this party. She is not welcome. No one else is welcome in the room, much less her. Only the Pharisees are allowed in the room. Only men are allowed in the room. And she just walks past the crowds outside and inside and comes straight to the feet of Jesus. The audacity. They're not just upset and interrupted. They are disgusted that she would even think about coming into this room. And so the question is, how did she get here? And odds are, you look at her story, and she probably has a handful of her own decisions that she's made that she would have to take responsibility for, right? We wouldn't just assume that, she's a victim and all of life has happened to her. Like, she probably has some things to own, and we don't know which side it weighs on. But here's what we do know, is that never once in this woman's life did she ever dream of growing up to be a prostitute, right? Just think about it. Never once in this woman's life did she ever dream of growing up to be a prostitute? Just imagine her hanging out with her 11-year-old friends, and they're all talking about what they want to be and what their lives are going to look like when they grow up. One says, I want to be a doctor, and one says, I want to be a news reporter, and the other one says, I want to herd camels, and then she's like, you know what, I want to be a hooker. That didn't happen. She did not say that. No one has ever said, man, I want to grow up and be a prostitute. And so then you got to ask the question, well, then if that wasn't her goal and dream, then some circumstances had to help her get here. Again, the text doesn't say this. I'm just trying to help us get into the position of humility as we look at her story. There's tons of scenarios we could play out, right? Meaning maybe her dad was abusive. Maybe her dad was abusive verbally or physically or sexually that caused her to lose self-worth and go down this path later in her life. Maybe she had a boyfriend who pressured her and manipulated her and said, hey, baby, if you love me, you will. And they, would have sexual relations, and he ended up getting her pregnant. And you got to understand, like, in that culture and context, family didn't surround you and take care of you if you got pregnant out of wedlock. You were shamed and ostracized and sent out. And so it's very possible, let's just say that she got pregnant and she had no help and no friends and no family, and she was disowned, and the only way that she could take care of herself and her little baby is by selling her body for sex in order to take care of them, right? You just start filling in the blanks. Maybe she was abandoned as a young child because her parents died at an early age. Who knows what the scenario was? There's 1,000 different ones. But we can absolutely assume that some events in her life caused her to lean towards this direction. And since that point, she has felt used. She has felt abandoned. She has felt ashamed. And she has been rejected by society over and over and over again. She would have never even expected to feel invited or welcome or safe around others, given the nature of her lifestyle. And the reason I invite you into that is just to take a moment, because it's easy to look at this story and look at it surface level, but if we could enter into her shoes for a moment, maybe her story is a lot like ours. And maybe for a moment we can see herself in this story, and we can see ourselves in this story as it relates to Jesus and see what he might have for us. And so maybe this is like your story or my story, or maybe it's like a friend or a family member that we're walking alongside, where we look up and the words come out of our mouth like this: I never thought I'd be here. I never thought I'd be going through this. I never thought I'd be divorced. I never thought I'd still be single. I never thought I would be sick or to carry this terminal illness. I never thought we'd end up bankrupt. I never thought that I would be a single parent. I never thought that one of my kids would be distant from me and we would have no relationship. I never thought that I would be jobless. I never thought that I would be homeless. I never thought that I would experience this kind of loss. And we can go down the list of, I never thought I'd be here. And whether you're in the valley yourself or someone you know is in that season, we can take a moment and empathize with what's going on in the story. And here's where we're going. Watch this in verse 38. It says that she knelt behind him at his feet, weeping. And what's going to be important in a moment is, why is she weeping? What's the motive of her weeping? Her tears fell on his feet, and she wiped them off with her hair. And then she kept kissing his feet and putting perfume on them. Now, you have to see the picture here, okay? This woman is a prostitute for a living, and perfume, it's really expensive in this time, okay? So for her to show up, to be breaking down, weeping, and covering his feet in tears, and then to dump out perfume, this is a really, really big deal. First of all, because perfume is kind of like their business card. Okay, not everyone could afford perfume, and so if you walked by a woman who was wearing perfume, it was kind of like, oh, like, hey, you're available. That's what that meant. Like, okay, and perfume it was like a calling card and a business card, if you will, and so it also represented a year's worth of salary. So it was incredibly expensive, and what she's doing is pouring it out is just unbelievable. And lastly, here's what we see, is that in the act of her pouring out this perfume on Jesus' feet, it's an amazing declaration, okay? Two things are happening. Number one, she is extravagantly worshiping Jesus for who she believes he is and what he's come to do for her. These are tears, by the way, of joy, not of shame. There's definitely mixed emotions as she comes in, but you're going to see in a minute that these are tears of joy because of the love of God, not because of the judgment of those around her, okay? But as she weeps and is pouring out the perfume, this is extravagant. Why? Because she is sacrificing a year's worth of wages. She lets down her hair, which is just preposterous in this culture, to let down a Jewish woman's hair in public at all. Not only does she let it down, but then she is wiping his dirty, muddy feet with her hair and her tears and this perfume. And all it's demonstrating is that, man, she is worshiping Jesus for who she believes he is and what he's come to do for her. Now hear me, how personal this is. Not what he's come to do for the world, not what he's come to do for others, but what he has come to do for her. Simultaneously, as she dumps this perfume out, it is symbolically like she is abandoning the lifestyle that she has been involved in. For her to get rid of a year's worth of wages and a year's worth of work, if you will, to get rid of all of her business cards, is not only am I abandoning my lifestyle, but I'm turning to you, Jesus. And here's what that means, is that whatever Jesus has offered her, she has been, man, just totally bought in that whatever you have is better than what I have. Whatever Jesus is inviting me into is better than anything I could ever have on my own. Now watch what happens in verse 39. The Pharisees see this, and it says, when the Pharisee who had invited Jesus saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know what kind of woman is touching him. She's a sinner. Now what he thinks is he's proving that Jesus is not who he was. Jesus said he was God, but clearly he doesn't know who's touching him. Therefore, he's not who he said he was. And then Jesus, check this out, answered his thoughts. That's just a little freaky in the moment, right? It's like a straight up Jesus Jew because they're sitting at the table. Like Jesus answers his thoughts. He's like, oh my goodness. Simon, he said, I have something to say to you. And so then he goes on, and in verse 47, he says, I tell you, her sins, check this out, and they are many. They're many, right? Jesus is not overlooking the reality of her lifestyle choice. They've been forgiven. So, the byproduct of that forgiveness is she has shown me much love. This is not her begging at Jesus' feet for forgiveness. This is thankfulness being poured out because of forgiveness. But a person who is forgiven little shows only little love. Then Jesus said to the woman, your sins are forgiven. And the men at the table said among themselves, who is this man that he goes around forgiving sins? And they just could not put the pieces together that he was who he claimed to be. And Jesus said to the woman, he just ignores them completely, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. Now here's my question for you and me. Why did this woman risk so much to get to Jesus? Right? She ignored everyone else. I mean, you can't imagine the crowd commotion and what this would do to her socially already. She was already in the pits, but this would be that much more against her. She just ignored everyone and went straight to Jesus. Why? I can't prove this, but I think it's a really good argument. I'm going to give it to you. Somewhere earlier that day, I believe that she either saw or heard from Jesus. Jesus was in her town, and probably he was there just for that day or had shown up just that day, given the urgency, right? Like if he was there for a while, she could have waited until a different opportune time to run into him rather than bursting into this party. But there's an urgency here that she would just ignore everyone else to get to Jesus. Now, Luke, right before this, earlier, tells us that Jesus' cousin John sends some of his disciples to ask some questions of Jesus. And those same questions we find in a parallel passage in Matthew 11. So Luke wrote a historical account and Matthew wrote an historical account. We have the same conversation happening in Luke 7 and Matthew 11. Now here's what's amazing. in Matthew 11, right after the conversation that we see happen right before this scene, Jesus gives a message to the crowds that are around him in this town. And the message that he gives is in Matthew chapter 11. And I want you to imagine that this woman was in that town, crowds were gathering, she was in that crowd, and she heard Jesus give this message, Matthew 11. And then Jesus said, "Come to me." Said to represent God, said to represent relationship with God, said to represent forgiveness of sin. And Jesus extends to the crowd as she stands there. "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light." As that woman stands there in that crowd that day, she hears Jesus say, "Come to me. Those of you who have been hurt and abused by religious leaders, come to me. Those of you who are desperate and broken and stuck and overwhelmed, come to me. Those of you who are struggling with addiction, come to me. Those of you who have baggage that is crushing you from your past, come to me. Those of you who are struggling with doubts of what you believe and where you're going to go with your faith and what you believe about God and all of these pieces, come to me with past regrets, and come to me with your current regrets and your current lifestyle. Come to me with your fear and your anxiety. Come to me because of the judgment of others and the weight and the shame that you feel." Jesus over and over again is extending the invitation to the crowds to come just as you are. And no one has ever extended that invitation to this woman. And what Jesus is saying is, you're still invited. And saying, "My Father sent me to tell you that he loves you. And you're invited into his family, just as you are. Come." Now here's what I want you to notice. It wasn't the judgment of the religious leaders pointing out this woman's sin that led her out of her sin, was it? It wasn't judging her lifestyle that set her free from her lifestyle. What was it that changed her? It was an invitation to know the Son of God, to experience his love, his grace, his forgiveness, and his freedom. And Jesus would often say, he would say, I didn't come for the healthy, meaning those who think they've got it all together. I came for the sick, those who know they don't have it all together. He says, man, it doesn't matter where you are, where you've been, you're invited, just as you are. Now, you guys remember No Hat Guy that I told you about in the beginning? I made a decision that day that if I ever had the opportunity to lead others in any capacity when it comes to following Jesus, that I was going to make up my own dress code. And here it is. Not naked. Okay? Not naked. That's the only thing. You come just as you are, as long as it's not in your birthday suit. And if it's all you got, then we're going to hook you up with some clothes. But not naked, meaning anyone is welcome. Guys, listen, we are going to continue to be the church for those who don't go to church. We're going to continue to be a community for those who don't have community. We're going to continue to be a family for those who don't have a family. And here's the deal. Listen, we're not going to wait for them to come to us. We will go to them. Why? So they can come to Jesus. We are the church, and we exist for the world. The beauty of our gathering online is that we're still the church where we live, work, and play. And so I can hear Jesus saying, come to me, no matter where you are, come to me. Even if you come before, come again and again. And to be clear, can I just ask you, what is it that Jesus is inviting us into? It's not come to church. It's not an invitation to better behavior. It's not an invitation to religious rules and regulations. What is it? It's an invitation into a relationship with the Son of God that changes everything, that brings us into God's family, that saves us and sets us free, and changes the direction of our entire life. Now stay tuned, because this same lady that we're talking about today is going to show up again next week, and we're going to watch that Jesus doesn't just save her and wish her good luck, but we see how the change in her life in this moment continues in the way that God works in and through her. And so here's the deal. When you come, don't come alone. You are invited. Come. Jesus is saying, come to me, whatever it is, come. But when you come, don't come alone. I had the privilege this week, I'm going to close with this story, of getting a text message on Friday from Maddie Serency, one of our team members. And the text message was simple. She just sent me a text and said, Anina gave her life to Jesus. And I think I was driving and I almost ran off the road. It was awesome. Like, I was so excited. And just a few days earlier, one of Maddie's friends, Anina, she was in our home. Danielle and I were doing dinner and hanging out and talking. And we've known Nina for a long time. I met Anina, like a year and a half ago. I remember the first time I met her, she was helping me unload like 15 boxes of Cosmos pizzas out of my van for an event at CU. And I watched Maddie, first of all, embrace the invitation from Jesus over and over again. Not just for new life and into the relationship with God, but for every burden that comes her way. I've watched her go to Jesus and come to Jesus. So not only has she come, but I've watched her extend that invitation over and over again to Anina. Over and over again, just meeting her where she is, loving her, serving her, helping her process. And guys, it was amazing. She came over, we got to talk some more, got to share about the love of God for her and process through some of the hard conversations about what it means to give your life to Jesus and some of the what ifs and the doubts. And it seemed like we made some really amazing progress that night. And Anina went home and we all went our way. And then a few days later, I get a text message that Anina gave her life to Jesus. And I'm like, yes, come on. That's why we do what we do. And here's the deal. The reason that's able to happen is because Jesus has been working in and through Maddie. She not only receives the invitation to come, but has continued to extend it. And now we get to celebrate Anina being a part of God's family. And so I don't know where you are today. I don't know what you've been wrestling with and what's heavy on your heart and mind, but Jesus just says, come. Just come. Can I be honest? It's been a heavy week for me. And I came to Jesus a long time ago at this point, but I needed to come to him again this week. Maybe you've never put your faith in Jesus, and maybe for the first time you can respond and say, man, Jesus, I believe you're who you said you were. I believe you love me, that you died for my sin to forgive me, and that faith in you brings me into relationship with God. And maybe for the first time you would let your head and heart connect and pray and ask Jesus to save you, and he would do that for you today. And not only are you invited into God's family and made new and right with God in that moment, but you're invited into the local family as well, where you can grow. And lastly, let me just ask you this. Who has God put around you that needs to know they're invited? Let's not assume we know anything about anybody's story. Let's just meet people where they are and help them find their way to God. I heard someone say it this week. In the middle of coronavirus season and everyone trying to pay attention to what they're sharing, if you're going to share anything in this season, make sure you're sharing love. Let me pray for you. God, thanks so much for our time. Thank you that we get to gather together, even online. I pray that you would work in and through our gatherings in city groups this week to speak to our hearts, to work in and change us and draw us closer to you. Any burdens on our hearts that we've been carrying, I pray that we would give them to you through that invitation. And man, would you give us the eyes to see the people around us, that we could love and serve and engage them in a way that lets them know that they are invited to come to you and experience new life. It's in Jesus' name. Amen.